There we go. Oh my good, I've just realized that it looks like I'm Alice because I've logged into Zoom. Look, my name is Alice. Great. That's nice and confusing for everybody.
Yeah.
Great, we've already got lots of people coming through the door, so that's going up. So we'll give everybody a couple of more minutes to get comfortable, and then Helen and I will introduce today's topic, and we are going to be going through some very, very exciting content. So just a few more seconds whilst everybody dials in. I love this part. It's so sad, but I love seeing the regular names. So I've not met most of these people, but it's amazing to see that people keep coming back week on week to hear more content. So it's great, and obviously it's very nice and confusing that I've now changed my name. All right, we're 1 minute past, so I'm going to get started because my bit is the boring bit, so it doesn't really matter if some people miss it. So thank you very much to everybody that has joined us today. For those of you that aren't familiar faces and haven't joined an EyeQuant Lunch and Learn before, we've scheduled these meetings, webinars with some of our fantastic customers and some of industry's best known professionals and experts in design, UX, various other disciplines. So the purpose of this is so that everybody gets a chance to learn about a new topic and network, ask questions. So we really, really are encouraging people to interact with us. We've got a couple of questions and there is that interaction, but we would love to hear if you've got any questions, and I will collate them and then probably annoyingly interrupt Helen throughout the presentation. But if you can just submit your questions via the chat, which should be at the bottom of your screen, that would be amazing. Great, we've already got some hellos, so that's working. We've also, our first question, brilliant, right off the mark. The session today is going to be recorded, and I'm sure that, Helen, you're going to be, you're happy for people to have a look at the slides as well, right? So we can send a copy of the slides and the recording out. Usually takes about 24 hours to download and process that, so we'll get that into your inboxes. So that's the Q&A covered off, and also the recording. And what Learning Club is. So over to the really exciting stuff. We're here today to learn and understand a little bit more about brands, brains, and how you can use that data to really, really have huge impact from a business perspective. So really understanding the motivations and the drivers behind us as consumers. So as you can see, well, one thing I wanted to mention now that we've got a few more people logged on, I'm not Alice. I've logged on accidentally using her Zoom. My name is Lorna Crowley. I'm CMO at EyeQuant. So EyeQuant is a predictive artificial intelligence that detects exactly where the human eye is going to be drawn to and picks up on the emotional impact of designs. So I'm really, really excited about this, obviously because of EyeQuant and working for EyeQuant, but also because I studied psychology quite a few years ago. So this is right up my street. But over to you, Helen. Can you tell us a little bit more about your role at Morfire as the head of conversion rate optimization and UX, but also a little bit more about what you guys are doing?
Yeah, so hi, as you already said, I'm Helen. I'm a business psychologist and communication designer, and I'm responsible for the Department of Conversion Rate Optimization and User Experience at Morfire. We're an online marketing agency from Germany, based in beautiful Cologne. Maybe important to mention, we have our own bar in the agency. Normally people find that exciting. Yeah, and I don't know, should I start with the talk directly or?
Yeah, let's go for it.
Okay, perfect. So I will tell you during the next, I think it will take 40 minutes, why it is important to take a closer look at the psychological characteristics of our target group, how we can segment our target group psychographically, and what this means for the design of our landing pages. So you could say oh great, my slides don't work. There we're going. So the main question of this talk is, what is it that makes a landing page good? So in this context, we usually speak about the concept of user experience, or UX. And yeah, this is a concept for which there are a whole lot of different definitions and models. We'll get back to that later in more detail. But for now, roughly speaking, UX is what resides from a user's interaction with a website, or in our case, with a landing page. So we see that how good a landing page actually is strongly depends on the user who's interacting with it. And the term user includes all motives, preferences, wishes, desires, etc. of an individual. So these influence significantly how a landing page is perceived, and whether the advertised product is considered desirable or worth buying. So yeah, geographic, demographic, behavioral data alone are not enough to characterize our users. We need to be able to emotionally categorize them and to find out what is it that they want, so we can target their motives and desires. You could say we have to find out what makes our target group tick. So in advertising psychology, there are numerous approaches to this, but the one model I personally am a huge fan of is the Limbic approach, according to Dr. Hans-Georg Heusel, nice German name. In my opinion, it is best applied to advertising material and landing pages. Little disclaimer here, in Germany, you need a license to work with this approach or to sell it, but information and publications on it are freely available. So I am at least allowed to tell you that it exists and how you could use it for your own purposes. So let's take a closer look at the Limbic approach. The Limbic approach is based on three main emotion systems, which essentially determine the personality of an individual. Every system has two sides. So one side that is striving for something, and the other side that is accordingly avoiding the opposite. First, we have the stimulant system, which is always longing for excitement, for new stimuli, for adventure, and so on. And what it wants to avoid is any kind of monotony or boredom. Then the balance system, which strives for stability and security, and it wants to avoid uncertainty and danger. And we have the dominance system, which primarily wants to achieve autonomy. It strives for power and enforcement, and it strives hard for respect and also prestige. Powerlessness must be avoided at all costs. So these three systems cannot be considered separately. They are arranged in a circle in the so-called Limbic Map. The great thing about the Limbic approach is, and the Limbic Map of course, is that there are keywords assigned to each of the systems, which are represented by A, B, and C here. And these keywords we can directly use for our advertising material. Here we can see a small selection. There are much more of the keywords assigned to each emotion system. And now I would like to do a little quiz here. So I would like to ask the audience, where do you think is the dominance area? Is it A, B, or C? When you're looking at the keywords, what do you think? Where's dominance?
Okay, great. I can see some really quick responses, and there's definitely a very, very popular answer here. So I'm going to give it a couple more seconds and then I'll end the poll and launch the findings. So if you haven't already voted, please do, and we'll close off in 3, 2, 1. End the poll. Share results. Can you see the results?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Very smart audience today because, of course, you're right. So B is dominant. Here we see the emotion systems arranged in the limbic map, so they blend smoothly into each other, and in the areas where they overlap, there are mixed forms. Between stimulant and dominance, we have the area of adventure and thrill. So these people are extremely willing to take risks, are always looking for the next big thrill. Between dominance and balance, we have the area of discipline and control. So people who are located here are extremely responsible, very well organized, very structured. And between stimulant and balance, we see the area of fantasy and pleasure. These are people who are very open, like to be in company, enjoy the good things in life, for example, good food, wine, of course, music, art, and so on. So as I already mentioned, the keywords assigned to each of these emotion systems, they characterize the system and show the corresponding preferences, wishes, and motives. And here we can see the so-called limbic types. So this is a typification of people who are located in the corresponding areas. And we can, again, use these to classify our target groups. I will shortly explain the 7 types. So let's start with the harmonizers. They are on the bottom left. And yeah, they focus on balance, on harmony, on care, on binding, family, good relationships. Then we have the open connoisseurs above that. They focus on openness and pleasure, but in a way that is not too exciting, unlike the adventurers, for example. Then our hedonists, strongly stimulant, totally fun-focused, so they only care about the short-term happiness, they don't care about tomorrow. Our adventurers, as the name already says, focused on adventure, strongly willing to take risks. Then on the top right, the performers, very dominant people. Yeah, they care about success and status, but also efficiency, so they're always willing to perform. And the disciplined people, they are also willing to perform, but here it's less about getting any recognition or being successful. It's more about the matter itself. And the traditionalists, who are extremely focused on the preservation of tradition and values. So this helps us to adapt our landing pages, texts, and other advertising material to the target group. But to do so, we first have to find out where on this map exactly our target group is located. So we have to gather some information. And in an ideal world, extensive market research has already been conducted in advance. However, many companies do not have the budget for this or lack the time or personal resources. So in this case, there are several other ways to approach your target group. For example, get industry insights. It is quite possible that studies have already been conducted on your industry or even your specific product category, from which you can then benefit. So the limbic approach also offers advice here. For example, which types of emotions have which brand or product preferences. For example, strong balanced oriented people, they like home and living products. Adventurers like Beck's beer. At least that's what a study from Germany says. And of course, this can always only be a hint for us. We always have to question it and test it ourselves. And when it comes to B2B products, we can use the so-called limbic sales types. This is a typification of people you can usually find in a company. And it is assumed that people choose their jobs according to personal preferences and that accordingly certain emotional systems are predominant in certain industries or departments. And if you want to, for example, address managing directors, then it is likely that you will meet rather dominant personalities. Harmonizers, on the other side, they all very often work in human resources.
I think we can all empathize with that, and immediately as you're talking through the different preferences, I'm trying to plot myself as to where I'd sit. We've got, and I imagine everybody else is as well, or I hope they are. So we've got a question come through. So do you classify people into one area only, or can they exist in multiple, depending on something like the seasonality or different times of year or whatever? So is it dynamic, or is it more kind of fixed as to where you sit?
This model is quite static. So it says that there's one main emotion system that you have, and one main motive you have. But of course, this can change a little to the left or to the right, depending on the situation. For example, for managing directors, maybe they're strongly dominant at work, but when they're coming home to their families, they are maybe less dominant. So it is a little flexible, but not too much, you could say, this model.
Great, okay, thank you.
Then, you may already have valuable data in your CRM. So even if it's only demographic data, age and gender can also provide us with some initial, very rough indications of the personality profile. Here we see how our brain metabolism changes with advancing age. And if we're looking at the red line, the hormone testosterone, which is of course assigned to the dominance area, increases at the beginning of life, and then it decreases again from the age of 20 onwards. So accordingly, it is likely that older target groups are less dominant than younger ones. Same applies to the neurotransmitter dopamine. It's the yellow line, which is assigned to the stimulant system. And then the stress hormone cortisol, the green line here, it, on the other hand, increases with age. So, which means that older people tend to be somewhat more in need of security than younger ones. They are more likely to be overexcited. You should not use too wild, colorful, flashing advertising material. Then gender can also tell us something about our target group. Here we see the distribution of the German population in the, among the limbic types, divided into male and female. And it becomes visible that women, for example, are much more likely to harmonizers. So 40% of German women are harmonizers, men only 19, so less than half. And when it comes to dominance, adventurers and performers, for example, the percentage of men is 3 to 4 times higher than that of women. Then this data can also be, of course, drawn from our Google Analytics or Google Ads. And in addition, search queries from Google Ads or target group information can help. So for example, if we see in Google Ads that a large proportion of our website visitors is also willing to buy Rolex watches, I don't know if that's a target group, I don't think so, but I hope you see where I'm going here. If that's the case, we can assume that we are not dealing with harmonizers here, but with rather dominant people. Even better, Facebook. So here we can read out preferences from the target group statistics. Pages that our fans have liked can also provide us with information. If, for example, there are an above average number of Ferrari fans, they're probably more likely to be in the dominance area, tendency, stimulus. And if you,
sorry, you mentioned Ferraris and Rolex watches. I'm getting a picture of the brands that you work with now. The research you've done.
Nice, no. Of course not. Yeah, so if you combine the information from all sources, you should definitely be able to form at least some initial hypotheses, which you can then simply test. So not only the landing pages should be tested, but also the advertising material can and should be tested. And if you have no idea what makes your target group tick, then just make 3 versions of your landing page, 1 for each emotion system, and run tests against each other. And how exactly you could build these landing pages, we'll look at that now. So many of you have probably already heard about the Limbic approach, and you generally know in which direction the advertising material should go. Many agencies in Germany have been working with this approach for a long time. And there are a lot of practical examples, but truly specific recommendations for action, how to build our landing page to address these people, are rare. So we want to change that today. if we want to adapt the landing pages to the user or his personality profile, we first have to take a close look at what a landing page actually is. So there's no uniform and generally valid definition, but I think we probably all agree that product pages of online shops are often used as landing pages, especially when it comes to Google Shopping. So we have gone through the whole thing using this example. On this shop page, we find the basic elements which are represented on every landing page, or which should be represented on every landing page. And yeah, let's have a look at what these are. So here's our headline. It's a product name and the product type below it. Then we have a product image, of course. On the right side, our offer text with product specifications, pricing, shipping conditions. And then we have a call to action, a button where we can add this product to our cart. So each of these elements was then adapted once for each of the main emotion systems of the limbic approach. And how exactly I show now with the example of the version for dominance. This is what the page looked like at the end. By the way, no, our landing pages usually don't look like this. We wanted to present as strikingly as possible. You will see later why. And yeah, what exactly did we do? So for the headline, in the best case, the product name already matches your target group. But often we don't have any influence on this and then simply adjust the subline. For example, for dominance, it could be something like the strongest vacuum cleaner in the world. So I'm not a copywriter, obviously, but for our survey, in this case, the whole thing had to be comparable. So therefore, we used Greek mythology. In this example, Agamemnon, the ruler. The other ones were called Hector, the protector for balance, and Apollon, which is the god of music and art, for stimulant. Then the product image. So the product design should, of course, also be adapted to the target group. But if that is not the case, the product can also simply be placed in a context that appeals to your target group. So in our case, for the purpose of comparability, a domestic context, since every emotion system should understand this. And the vacuum cleaner here is, of course, just a secondary matter. So it's badly cut in, always in the same place for the purpose of comparison. We try to simply translate terms from the Limbic Map into a visual language. And here in this picture, for dominant users, we have a living room. It's a loft that looks quite expensive. We wanted to convey prestige, exclusivity, but it also appears efficient in a way. So it is quite empty, it is sterile, it is not cozy. And this becomes particularly clear in the direct comparison. And here I would like to do a little poll again. So as I already showed you, the dominance image is the one on the left side. And now I would like to know, what do you think, where is the, so which image has been used for the balance landing page?
Great, we've already got some responses. So we'll have another, say, 10 seconds so that everybody can complete. Right, it's a lot more split. Well, it was as soon as I said that. Right, okay, great. So I'm going to end it now. If you haven't, you've got 2 seconds. There we go. End poll and share results. Okay, A 62% and B 38%. All right. So then let's see. Yeah, the majority of you got it right. So A was the balance image, and we see that balance, in contrast, it should convey security, coziness, sociability. We have the light brown tones. We have a kitchen with a central dining table ready for the family to come and have lunch or something. It is tidy, but it's not clean or sterile. And then stimulant, the right picture, which is much more colorful, it's more playful. We have a lot of pleasure motifs. We have the huge kitchen in the middle for happenings, already food on the table, ready for a nice wine evening with friends.
And there are many sources of stimulation here. So we have the different chairs, we have the huge TV in the front on the left, then we have a bookshelf in the back with a whole lot of stuff, maybe souvenirs from different vacations. And the great thing is that we can objectively prove that the stimulant image is much more exciting. Lorna, maybe you want to say a couple of words?
I'd love to. So we actually added this in after we'd originally had a look at the test and the experiment that Morphi had conducted, because we were really interested in, number one, proving that, so obviously people, the majority, I think it was 60 something, were correct in guessing which one was representing balance. And we obviously wanted to understand whether artificial intelligence also has the power to be able to identify which elements contribute to a visually stimulating design. So the good news is, because otherwise I'd be out of a job, the good news is that EyeQuant, you can see the results there from the excitingness score. So the excitingness score on the top right of those imagery, you've got on the left-hand side for balance is 77, and then for the stimulant, it's higher, so 83. So what EyeQuant is doing, which is the predictive AI based on eye tracking data, is been able to identify those elements that Helen's just mentioned about contrast, about clutter, about the actual visual hierarchy of how things are separated and spread out. And those things are all contributing to whether something is stimulating or something is more harmonizing and balanced. So great result for EyeQuant to be able to pick that up. The way that we actually did this test, we don't usually do or analyze just photography. It's landing pages in their entirety, but as Helen had said, those landing pages were mocked up purely for the experiment. So we thought that this would be a good test. And why is that interesting? I think it's really, really interesting, exactly why you've just said, it quantifies. So as designers or as digital optimization experts, we've got a lot of things to be thinking about, right? Who our target audience is, within what context, what are they looking for, the ad copy, the actual photography, there's so many components. And if we do have the tools available to help shape and inform us, then let's start using it. So I think it was just a really interesting exercise to see that you can quantify what is stimulating and what is more calming. So it's a good result for EyeQuant, I think.
Yeah. All right, so back to our dominant landing page. For the offer text, we simply use terms from the Limbic Map or terms that describe them. So here you can see on the left, the area of the Limbic Map, the dominant area, and some of the keywords. And on the right side, we have our new ad text, our new offer text. And yeah, we simply used these words or either directly or synonymously. So what do we have? We have a full vacuum power without back. So power is a very, very, very important keyword for dominant people. That's like their main goal. Then we have extra strong suction power. Our motor is superior and highly efficient, and there's no time wasting by changing backs, again, in the sense of efficiency. And our dust container, it's not large, it's extra large, and the design is not handy or anything. Of course, it's exclusive. Then for the button, we changed wording and colors. So now it says something like buy now, buy directly. Again, efficiency, so no time wasting, buy it and it's done. And as an accent color, we used red. And the emotional systems in the Limbic Map are associated with certain colors. So for example, red and black are assigned to the dominance area. In any case, this topic should be treated with caution because the meanings of colors are also culturally learned. Saturated colors, for example, are often used for light products, or white and blue are used for cleaning products. Yeah, you should definitely keep that in mind when you're using this. And yeah, so it's done. We did the exact same thing for the other two versions. Here you can see them in the overview. And at this point, we wanted to know if our translation of the limbic approach to landing pages was successful. And of course, we wanted to know what effect this has on the user experience. So, is the user experience really perceived as better when there's a fit between the landing page variant and the user's emotional system? And to answer this question, we must first clarify what we are talking about here. So, as I said in the beginning, there are a whole lot of different definitions and models to UX. And yeah, I'm not going to argue with you experts now about this, because then we will sit here forever. But I would like to tell you about the model I personally like to use most, which is the UX operating model from Facit Digital. In my opinion, this can be applied to websites and landing pages very well. So here UX is divided into 5 different success factors, and let's take a brief look at the individual factors. So the first factor is the utility, which deals with the question if the site serves a purpose. Is there a goal attainable? So does this landing page make any sense at all? Then accessibility, which deals with technological specifications, loading time, browser compatibility, stuff like that. Then the usability, of course, which is about if the goal can be achieved. So utility, is there a goal? Usability, can the goal be achieved in a reasonable time with little effort? As you can see, the first 3 factors are objectively measurable in a way, but now we're getting to the highly subjective factors like aesthetics. This is about if a landing page appears attractive to the user. So do I, as a user, think it's fun to use? Are there maybe even emotions aroused? And if so, which emotions? And then we have the brand or product promise, which is about if the user finds the product suitable. So after looking at the landing page, reading the text, interacting with it, do I, as a user, think the product is suitable for me? Does it fit? And is there a willingness to buy? We now have a clearer picture of what exactly we want to measure. And from this operationalization of the term user experience, we have now created an interview guide. We conducted a qualitative study to find out whether our translation of the limbic approach is even appropriate, and if so, how it affects the user experience. So we created this interview guideline here that covers all factors of the UX operating model except accessibility, as this factor is not relevant in this context. So a landing page should always be accessible. It should always load. It doesn't depend on the emotion system. So all subjective aspects, important to mention, the subjective aspects of the model were surveyed using projective and associative methods, since emotions often cannot or do not want to be expressed by the participants, so the test persons, directly. Well, and now we needed suitable test persons. So suitable means with the strongest possible expression in one of the emotional systems. And to find them, we made a short limbic test with about 90 people. This test is freely available online for a first evaluation. So of course, it's not a fully fledged personality analysis, but it gives us some good indications. And this way, we've been able to find 13 persons with a really strong expression in one of the 3 basic emotion systems. And then the first question was, does our translation of the limbic map even fit? So do users understand representations as we intended? And yeah, to find out about that, we transcribed all the interviews and did a qualitative content analysis and looked at which expressions the test persons used to describe the individual landing pages. So which terms that they use to describe what they see. And these are the results. So here we can see the percentage of all emotional terms that have been used by all test persons while looking at the different landing page versions. And does it fit? Yes, it does. As you can see here for the balance landing page, 80.3% of all expressed emotion terms, so emotion terms like adjectives, comparisons, and stuff like that, they appear either directly or synonymously in the limbic map in the balance area. Then even a little more for the dominance landing page. Here, 80.6% of all expressed emotion terms appear in the Limbic Map's dominance area. And for stimulant, it was a little less, but still 70.4% of all terms used are terms from the stimulant area of the Limbic Map. So it seems to work out quite well. And now the question remains about the joy of use. What effect did the different landing pages have on the different emotional systems? Did the test persons like the landing page that was created for their emotional system best? And as we have seen, the UX is the overall picture consisting of many different factors. And this is why, to answer this question, test persons were instructed to take a real quick look, as 5 seconds, at every landing page and then rank them. So the question was, which of these landing pages did you like best, which least? And these were the results. So here we see the result for the dominant test persons, and on average, the dominance representation here occupied the rank 1.5, so best. Then the stimulant landing page was ranked 1.75 on average, and they really did not like the balanced landing page because as we can see, this one is far behind on the last rank. For the stimulant landing page, test persons also chose their version of the landing page, and clearly behind that, the landing pages for the other two emotion systems, both ranked with an average of 2. And finally, the balanced landing page with a similar result. The matching landing page is in first place here as well. And behind it, the stimulant landing page, and clearly behind that, the dominance landing page. So we see that this also fits surprisingly well. Of course, the statistical significance is missing here. And this is a qualitative study. We could do some quantitative research to validate this. But I think the trend is quite clear. And what is also interesting, not directly related to the main question, but once again, it has been confirmed how important images are. So the majority of all comments that on the landing pages referred to the images. So 34% of all the things our test persons said, they said about the images. So it can be assumed that they are strongly attention attracting. And we see once again how important it is to have good image material. If possible, no stock photos, invest in good graphics and pack shots, not like we did in our example here. And yeah, I'm coming to my conclusion. So first, collect as much qualitative information as possible about your target group. Then, approach their motives and try to classify them. So it doesn't necessarily have to be limbic, but you should use some model, because this way you're able to specify who you're addressing, and maybe you can tell me afterwards what models you used or already used and how it worked out, because I'm always interested in that. And finally, no psychological model is infallible. So just adapt your advertising material to the insights you have gained and just test it. Yeah, by the way, this is us, More Fire from Cologne. And this is me. So if you got any questions, ask them now or write me an email afterwards. And here I've got the handout link for you as well, but I think you will send them anyways, right, Lorna?
Yes, yeah. So some of the questions have been around resources. So we've so far got 7 questions that I've kind of queued up, if you're okay to answer those. Great. Okay. So I've kind of grouped them. Just on that last study, when you were talking about the experiment, one of the questions from an anonymous registrant is, how did you identify the limbic type for each of the participants?
That was the short test I mentioned. So it is an online test which gives us some indication. So it is not a fully personality test, but this way we found our participants.
Great. And would you be able to share that link with us, and we can share that with people in the resources page?
Yeah, totally. I hope this exists in English, but
okay. Yeah, I think that would be good. And then people can have a look at the types of questions that are asked to be able to profile, because I think that will give people, well, everyone a lot more detail around how you kind of, I say, it's not a psychometric assessment, as you've said, but how you can understand which system that is the most dominant for each person. There's a bit of a niche question here. Ed has asked, they deal with people who have just had a baby. So does the limbic model account for lifestyle changes like having a baby?
Not directly, but I would assume at least the women are strongly balance orientated at that time. So that's my guess, but I don't have like any objective proof for that. I'm sorry.
Okay, great. And as you said, start with getting that qualitative feedback and understanding your target audience. And you've got some tools for that, which we've just discussed, right? So we can send the survey or the questions, and Ed, you can have a look at those to see if there's a way that you can get that kind of feedback from those new mothers. I think that would be really, really interesting. Great. The next one, what kind of measures do you use to identify personality profiles based on analytics data? So I think this relates to the slide where you were talking about Facebook data and various other analytics.
Yeah, so for analytics, it's like not that easy. You always are just making assumptions, right? So we always have to test it. But what I personally am looking at is like search queries from Google Ads, because this way we can look at what terms they're using. It's not always like, yeah, it doesn't always tell us something important, but it can, so we should at least take a look at it, and the target group statistics. So there we can see, like, do people also search for or are interested in, I don't know, vacation or adventure vacation, and all these target groups that are existing at Google Ads. These can help us very much. And even better, Facebook, because there we have even more qualitative insights to our target group.
Yeah, definitely. I think often the search queries and keywords that consumers are searching to find solutions are often overlooked, whereas some brands, so you conduct their own internal research, have a great picture of who they're targeting, but use their own terminology to target those consumers, whereas what we should all be doing is using the terminology and the words used by people in the opposite direction. So it's extremely valuable, and often it's like you have a look, like from my own experience, I'm like, why have we not called it that? Like, why did we not use this terminology ourselves? Like, especially for B2B, we go super corporate and forget that people are just people looking for solutions to solve their problems. So let's speak like people rather than big corporates. So yeah, I could definitely echo the value of search queries and using consumers' own search terms and words. So there's a couple on accessibility. So I know you mentioned, so this was during the bit where you mentioned that accessibility is not included in the criteria. So Chris has asked, so you said that you don't include accessibility in your interview guide. Can designing alongside the principles you have talked about negatively impact accessibility?
If they can, so they shouldn't. They definitely shouldn't. So accessibility is the one thing that always should be there. And there's no limbic type when you're taking this approach. There's no limbic type that prefers websites that load like slower. That doesn't exist. So yeah. There's no like accessibility first, and then we're talking about the content and how to design it for our target group. That's at least my opinion about that.
Yeah, of course. And I think there's lots of tools available as well, so that you can use in conjunction with these kind of guidelines, right? So there are lots of plugins that you can use to detect the contrast of different elements to make sure that the design, the copy, it is all accessible to everybody. So I think that once you're actually putting this into practice, we can also send that. So I'm writing down a list of some of the resources that we can send. So we can also send a list of some of those really, really useful tools that I know a lot of our customers use in conjunction with EyeQuant, for example. So understanding the contrast, but also then quantifying that from an accessibility perspective as well. So I can send that over. So I hope that's answered the question around accessibility. And then there's one on, are there brands / classifications across the 1 to 100 excitingness score to help users interpret the results across different audience types? So this is what I'd written down. We have actually got a benchmark report that perfectly, I know there's no surprise here because it's data, and data usually either supports your hypotheses or obviously it doesn't. So Helen was mentioning earlier around if you are some of the demographic information. So we've got a lot of customers that work in the insurance industry, sorry, and if they are selling pensions, which I think we've mentioned before, or life insurance, probably the least sexy product in the world to be able to sell and market. So some of the tools and tactics that we were explaining earlier around contrast, excitingness, that's really not relevant for that specific buyer. And you can see that in the benchmark report that we've actually done. We found that insurers have calmer, more clearer designs generally, and say in complete contrast, people or companies, websites in gaming and betting have hugely stimulating, exciting scores because they're trying to have and elicit that emotional response whilst you're on the website, because that obviously, once your adrenaline is pumping and you're more stimulated, you're more likely to take risk, and that's exactly what those websites are kind of steered to do. So we'll send that benchmark report as well, so you can kind of see how different industries are already, whether or not they're aware of it, but changing the way that they design specifically to some of these emotional systems that we've mentioned. Right, I know we're coming up to the end of the session. We've got one last question. How many participants did your how many participants did your poll have? I think I think that might be relating to the poll in this webinar. I'll have to double check, unless it's relating to the experiment that you conducted and you were talking through, Helen.
Yeah, that were 13 persons.
13?
13, yeah.
Yeah, okay, great. Okay, so well, we've answered, well, I can get to the poll questions for this if you're interested as well. And I don't know if there's any other questions. There's quite a bit on accessibility, but I think we've covered that off by using other tools, and those resources are going to be really, really valuable for people to be able to use themselves. Yeah, let me just check the chat section. Yes, okay, so do you have, so again, resources. So you've obviously, Helen, talked about some really, really interesting things and people want to go and learn more. Do you have a comparative table with the characteristics of the 3 groups?
Yeah, of course. And I will send you the links later together with the Limbic test. So then you can just put them in the email.
Great. Okay. So everybody's going to have, just to summarize, access to this recording, the slides, benchmark reports, the questionnaire that you used. Bear in mind, it may not be in English, but I'm sure there's going to be equivalent surveys available as well. And then that table for comparisons for those characteristics. So there's a lot of research and supporting resources to come following this session. So I just wanted to thank you, Helen, for providing such a thought-provoking presentation. It's very, very clear that people have got a lot more interest in understanding exactly how you guys are understanding brains, brands, and that data. So I think it would be absolutely incredible to have you on and do another session if you haven't been bored to death by listening to me.
No, thank you for having me. And yeah, of course, I'm coming back if you want.
Great. Thank you so much. And thank you to everybody for your really interesting questions. Look out for that email summarizing what we've just discussed, and have a great day.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay.